As the nation and the world grapple with the coronavirus pandemic and an economic crisis, as well as social reckoning around race issues, there has been a shift in what people value the most these days. That shift is causing some brands to rethink how they market to consumers. That's according to a recent report from the communications firm Edelman. The report also found that brands have a new role to play as people look to them to address some of society's biggest issues, as well as promote positivity and hope as consumers navigate new realities. For more on the report's findings, I'm joined now by Edelman CEO Richard Edelman. Richard, good to have you with me.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, this report touches on how consumer trust is now a driving force behind purchasing. How are we seeing brands earn that trust amid these crises?
So you have a real change in the ecosystem where fears of personal safety have escalated massively. And therefore, your values change. So it's about your family. It's about kids' education. It's about a sense of are we going to be okay? And therefore, brands that are smart are going to change their approach in order to do something in order to make sure that people feel safe and feel secure. Don't communicate without action. And also address people's fears. We found that people are 4 times more trusting in a brand that alleviates my fears. And it's also critical to purchase. It's a stunning statistic to see that, brand democracy is in full flower. I'm only going to buy that brand if it stands up and speaks for me and acts for me.
How has the way that brands then communicate with and market to consumers changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, there are certain things about our society, obviously, that have changed. We're at home more. And in addition to some of the things that you're saying, I'm wondering how they're reaching out to consumers then.
So we found in this study that, in fact, it's not about my image and what brand makes me look like a cool guy. It's actually much more about, does the brand make me feel safe? Does the brand actually deliver on its promise of quality and also on price? But trust becomes the new factor. Historically, brands have sold themselves on the basis of the 4 Ps, like price and place, promotion, et cetera. Trust becomes the new sort of linchpin as to whether consumers actually will go to the supermarket and buy something. And again, it's the tone that we have to use. We have to be very conscious not to be overly celebratory over Christmas. We have to talk about the safety aspects of brands, but also the price such that people feel they're getting good value.
It's interesting as you're talking about trust because it feels like in a different time that there was more trust in companies, and in more recent times that trust has eroded. But research shows that people want brands now to address big societal issues like climate change and poverty. Why are people looking to companies to play an active role when it comes to these societal issues? And have you seen any impact on companies that are more passive or hold views that conflict with their consumers?
The safe play for brands and companies historically is when there's a very heavy weather, you duck and you just put your head down and the bad weather passes over you. Doesn't work anymore. What we have to say is brands that speak up on these issues are 5 times more trusted than those that don't. And that's a stunning change in the ecosystem. If government and media were deeply trusted, then business wouldn't have to fill the void. But that's the story right now. Brands are Superman or Superwoman, and they have huge expectations on them. Treat the employees well. Make sure that you're changing the environment. Make sure that I'm safe when I go to the QSR restaurant and go to KFC. And again, the companies that are doing well out of this are taking on issues. So Ajinomoto has a program called Take Out Hate. So when there was all these allegations about Kung Flu and whatever, Ajinomoto, which makes MSG, said, go to the Chinese restaurant and get the food as a takeout because they deserve to be supported. And it was a great campaign. Similarly, Dove over Father's Day, when they talked about Father's Day taken, and it was too many African-American males in jail for unnecessary penalties. So again, brands as activists is really smart, not political, but societal.
I'm thinking through all of this, and it's interesting, too. Your report found that 48% of those surveyed say that brands actually have better ideas for fixing the country's problems than the government. But yeah. Call me a skeptical consumer. I know that government is not a panacea for solving societal problems, and consumers absolutely should use the power of their pocketbook to make smart decisions and recognize how those decisions impact things that they care about. But are people putting too much trust into corporations that are just seeing this potentially as marketing ploys to try and improve their bottom line?
Look, I believe that smart brands aren't going to do trust washing, just as they don't do greenwashing. If you're a good brand and a smart brand, you do something like Heineken, and you bring people together over a beer, and you talk about both sides having common things like kids or education. And you're also clever if you take on issues of the day. Quicken Loans offering special loan program for veterans who are homeless. There are so many needs in our society as there's the recession, systemic racism, and COVID-19 that brands are being asked to fill a void. Government can only do so much in this crisis.
What happens to brands that violate that trust that you've been talking about?
You see a real snapback against them. You see that brands that get political have a whole coalition of people boycotting them. You also see brands being held to account. If they say that they're for something and it's actually exposed that they're not, if they're not good to their word, it's doubly bad. So you've absolutely got to recognize the possibility of being boycotted over your stances. And look at these numbers increasing over time. You see that politics is entering into business. And brands have to be consistent. They have to stay with their values. They have to do things that actually matter in society. And they have to be sure that their employees are behind them. Because it used to be a world like this of pyramid. Now the pyramid is flipped.
So how do those brands that maybe they purported to stand for something and then turn out to violate trust, how do they earn trust back then?
So I think first you have to change historical problems. So whether you're Uncle Ben's or Aunt Jemima or even good humor bars, if there were things associated with slavery or minstrel period, et cetera, you have to make that change. The second is, I think you actually have to do something affirmative. You have to make sure that you're actually acting on behalf of your customer base. Example, again, Dove is doing something called the Crown Act, where they're trying to endorse young women being able to go to school with all kinds of hairdos. That's speaking for your constituency and making them feel as if you stand with them.
All right, Richard Edelman, thank you.
Thank you so much.